G'day Internet, welcome back to another video. This here is my MSX. It is a Mitsubishi ML-F80, which makes it a MSX1 model. Now, I picked this up a little while ago. It came to me with a black screen, and if you ever Google MSX black screen, the number one fault is the ROM, and it was the ROM. So not really much to report there. It's a little beat up, but it does work. Now, when it comes to loading software though, at the moment, the only option I have is my SVI CAS. Now, it works great. It's a champion of a little device, but I'd like something a little, well, let's be honest, quicker. I was trying to come up with a word like convenient or whatever it happens to be, but no, I just want something quicker. Now, over the last couple of months, Randall, Patreon, link in the description, he's been building up a MSX Omega, which if you don't know is kind of a DIY MSX. And one of the things he made for it was a floppy drive controller. And he had some spare PCBs and a few spare components, and here we are. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build a floppy drive controller for my MSX. So I think I've got all the bits. I hope I've got all the bits. I have coffee. So I think we're pretty much right to roll. Let's take a look at all the parts that I've got in front of me, and then I guess we'll just get building. Okay, a whole selection of parts. We've got some 28-pin sockets, which are for the ROM. We've obviously got our PCB. It takes various chips and components. We'll go through that a bit later on. Resistors. It uses quarter-watt resistors. And, 3D printed case. And this is another bag of stuff. We've got the floppy drive controller, the ROM, and that's a 16 megahertz crystal just there. Another random socket, some jumpers. We've got some pin headers. That is I need my glasses, my eyes. That is a 74 LS04 floppy drive header connector, the wrong socket that I ordered. Those resistors I don't need anymore. Some capacitors, some more capacitors, another crystal which I'm actually going to use. The one that Randall gave me, another socket, not reusing those resistors, more capacitors, and this should be a 138. It's a 74 LS 138. So let's get building. I think for starters, we'll give the PCB a bit of a wipe down. I'm sure Randall already has, but bit of IPA, and mount it in my little PCB holder. Little side note, this PCB seems to actually be, just tighten it up a bit, have nice wide borders on it, so you can mount it and not have to screw around. I think it would seem logical for the first thing to go in is sockets. Oh, that's where my 40-pin socket is. It's already got the chip sitting in it. And making sure we've got the notch lined up. This should just drop straight in here as long as I haven't bent any legs. Right. A bit of blue tack to give us a helping hand. Flip it over. I've got some flux. And let's get soldering. Right, that's the first socket in. Let's now drop in the 28 pin socket for the ROM. Again, just making sure we've got our notch lined up and a bit of blue tack to help us out. And that's all the sockets in. So far, so good. Think now I'll start on resistors. So, mainly so I don't get them all mixed up. Right, they're 150s, 1K, and 330s. Let's start on the 330s. These are a very tight fit. We've then got three 150 ohm resistors just here. And finally a 1K resistor down the side. Okay, next we've got four 100 nanofarad capacitors to go in. There's one squeezed in just here, one here, and one up here. Ooh, I missed a 1K resistor. Okay, 100, 1, 2, 3, 4 100 NF capacitors. These don't look right. These are 0.47. What are these? I should have 104s. Right, I'm back, this time with the correct parts. Where were we? A bunch of 100 NF capacitors, which I now have. Okay, let's get these soldered in. All right, we've got a single 10F one there, also known as a 103. Okay, we can't have much left. Actually, we do. Let's get the crystal in. Now, the next to go in is this 4.7 UF electrolytic. Now, the instructions specifically say if you're going to put this in a case, and I am, it needs to be kind of leant over. So let's make sure I've got the polarity right. I do. Negative that way, negative to my left. So let's put it in and then bend it over a bit like that. There's a series of jumper pins on here, so 4 sets of 3, and that's what these are for. So let me cut 4 sets of 3. 4 sets of 3, 4 sets of 3. Now, how do I want to do this and kind of keep them reasonably straight? I think I'll just do each set at a time. And by default, it's the top 2 of each set, which is joined by these header pins. And last but not least is the header pins for the floppy drive connection, and it just goes there like that. So the last thing to do is just simply populate all the chips. So we've got our main floppy drive controller, which is a Western Digital 37C65B. And that just neatly goes into there. We've got our ROM. Thank you, Randall, for burning this for me. I could have done it. I've got the equipment. But he was nice enough to do it for me. We've got our 7404, and this little guy just goes in here. And finally, somewhere around here, I should have the last IC that I need. There it is. And that is our 74LS138. So in theory, that should all be done. I'll obviously now go and give it a double check and also clean up all the flux mess that's on the back, because I think we all know that no clean flux is bullshit. Then it'll be time to test it on the MSX. All right, just to confirm, the MSX is still working, and just want to make sure this goes in the right way. Okay, it goes in this way, and in theory I should turn this on and get something about Disk Basic on the screen. No. Okay. Oh, hang on. Hey! It worked. Okay, so I basically just cleaned the cartridge slot with a bit of deoxit, and it's now working. Let me turn it off, turn it back on again. What threw me was that it actually takes noticeably longer to boot with this in, which kind of makes sense because it's got like a whole nother ROM to load. And there we go, Disk Basic version 1.0. Now what I need is a disk drive. So of course, I'm not actually going to use a floppy drive. I'm going to use a Gotek. This normally has a cover on it. This is kind of my go-to Gotek, I guess, because it's got both edge connector for 5 1/4 and a 34-pin normal connector here. I think I've set this up right. There's just a couple of options in Flash Floppy. I think I set it to Sugar and turned the host type to MSX. And I should be able to turn this on. It was already on. And we've got Road Fighter, and in theory, this should just boot up. Gotek's doing something. Hey! Konami software. I haven't got any sound plugged in, sorry. Never actually played this before. I know it's a classic, especially on the MSX. Clearly I've never played it before. There's a Master System game that this reminds me of. Action Fighter or something. But yeah, nice. That seems to be working, apart from the whole crashing thing. Great. So I'm going to get all this buttoned up, and then let's take a look at some software. I've kind of bolted everything back together. The cartridge has its case on it. The Gotek has its cover on it. And I've spent a few hours kind of poking around at some of the games that will run on this machine. And as far as I can tell, so I downloaded the TOSEC for MSX1, and there's a whole directory in there of DSK, so disk image games. And they essentially fall into kind of 4 categories. Games that just don't work. I don't know why. I don't know enough about the MSX to try and work out why they don't. Every single game that doesn't work seems to throw a different error. I don't know if they're looking for more memory or they're just a bad rip or what they are. There's then games that I know, so Western games, I guess you could call them, that all just seem to be really kind of lazy ZX Spectrum ports. Now, don't get me wrong, the MSX1 is not the most capable computer in the world, but I know it can do better than just a lazy ZX Spectrum port. Then there are a few games that I do know of, and they run fine, and they look good, and they're really enjoyable. And then there's the games that I've never heard of before, but come highly recommended, that do run, that I've kind of really come to like. So let's start off with the latter category. I've got on here a game called Nightmare, and if I reboot the MSX, you will have to, I do have to apologise for the waviness on the video capture. It's the same on my screen, and I think it's either my SCART cable, although it's the same SCART cable I use for my Spectrum Plus 2 and I don't get it, or it's the wiring from the TMS RGB board that's in this. But this is Nightmare. This is kind of a odd little vertical shooter in the sense that, I mean, it's sort of like a vertical shooter, but you kind of walk forward slowly. It's not constantly trying to push you forward like a traditional kind of vertical shooter, but it is quite enjoying. I'm assuming that power-up says something in Japanese that I've got no idea what it says. But it looks like I should pick it up. But it's colourful. The sound track is very nice. It obviously reminds me a lot of my beloved Master System. And because it's the same sound chip, as far as I remember. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun. Now, obviously, I can't spark up an MSX without spinning up a copy of Road Fighter. I'm pretty sure that there is a law written somewhere that thou shalt play Road Fighter. And this is just, it's a nice little kind of top-down racer. It's got reasonable, I mean, the scrolling is maybe a little, I can kind of feel a little clunkiness to it, but, it's a fun little game. I kind of, when I was going through the games before, I probably, I don't know, I lost a good half an hour, 3/4 an hour playing this. I do that a lot. Now, like I said, there seems to be a lot of Western games which are just basically lazy ZX Spectrum ports. Chase HQ seems to be a fairly good example of that. I know that the MSX can do better than this. Admittedly, no, you don't have, your usual color, ZX Spectrum color clash, but, basically, what, we got 3 colors in the main playing field. This is clearly just a ZX Spectrum port, and not a particular, I mean, it runs nice and smooth, I will give it that, but it's just, I know the MSX can do better than this. So to compare apples and apples, I guess, here is another racing game called Hyper Racer, again by Konami. Now, I am terrible at this, but, I mean, yes, the graphics are simpler. But at least we have, like, multiple colors in the play field. Things aren't obviously as detailed, but this is a lot better game to play than Chase HQ. Now, there are some really good games that I do know of, and one of them is a really great port, actually, of River Raid, which I'm not very good at, but this is just, I mean, River Raid does not have to be a particularly complicated or detailed game to be good, because let's be honest, the original on the 2600 wasn't. But this is, I mean, it's fun. It works. So another game that falls into the category of I've never heard of it before, but I've quite enjoyed it, is King's Valley. Which is a cute little game. And the the objective is to go around and collect, I assume, all these gems that are around the place. And evade the bad guys. I think it's pretty as simple as that. Come on, am I gonna get that? Yes. Where have I got to go now? Do I have to go and get... Bugger. I don't know what you do once you get all the gems. So let's finish off with, and if you watched my ZX Omni video, you'll know that I've never once gotten past the first screen of this Manic Minor. Let's see if I can do any better on the MSX. No. I'm sure there's a way of getting past that top bit. Run. Right, how do you do this? No. Needless to say, after the ZX Omni video, a whole bunch of friends of mine sent me short little video clips of them just nailing that level. So there we go. My MSX, my Mitsubishi ML-F80, now has a disk drive controller and I can load software from my Gotek. Like I said, there was still a bunch of stuff that just would not load. R-Type was one, which is a shame because I know the version of R-Type on this machine is actually really good. But I think it did load from my SVI CAS, so I guess I've kind of got a backup. And it was kind of frustrating with the amount of DSK files that are downloaded that just didn't work. And I honestly don't know why, because like I said, I just don't know enough about this machine as it currently stands. So if you've got any ideas of why they may not have loaded, please let me know down in the comments. But I'm happy to now have an easier way, as long as the files work, to load software on my MSX. But for now, that will pretty much do it. If you liked the video, click like, subscribe, all the usual YouTubey stuff. As always, a massive shout out to my Patreons who are scrolling up the screen as I speak. And very specifically to Randall, who gave me a bunch of the parts for this project. And if you'd like to help support the channel, there is a link in the description. But until then, I'll see you in the next one.